And I think it'll be interesting to see who replaces her, because there's quite a lot of politics involved in this, and particularly politics between Germany and France, the Banque de France and the Bundesbank. I think that the Germans might argue it's their turn. Well, it goes back to President Trump really insisting that Europe defend itself. You could argue that the logical conclusion of what President Trump was saying was, as far as NATO is concerned, this year, last year, and the year before, America has been in recession. I mean, the private sector has been in recession, and that's the one that counts. And this is why unemployment is actually rising. But, the government controls all the statistics, and we believe what they say. I mean, they're telling lies, actually. The statistics are no guide at all. So on that basis, I mean, it is clear, I think, that the dollar is now under pressure. It's a difficult one to answer because she was appointed as a safe pair of hands, as it were. And broadly, in the ECB's context, I think that she has fulfilled that role. Now, this is not to say I agree with her policies. I don't think she really understands economics, in fact. She certainly doesn't understand money and credit. She has not been very well advised. I mean, I think this is the point, that the president of the ECB is someone who is advised, if you like, by his or her fellow directors, executives, and so on. I don't think she's been very well advised. So I have some sympathy, if you like. I don't throw brickbats at her like some people do. She's a very ambitious lady. And when I saw the announcement this morning, I thought, oh, she wants to stand as president of France. And she's clearing the decks for that. Now, I think that's probably a stretch too far for her, if that is actually what she's intending to do. Yeah. And I think it'll be interesting to see who replaces her, because there's quite a lot of politics involved in this, and particularly politics between Germany and France, the Banque de France and the Bundesbank. I think that the Germans might argue it's their turn.
The post-World War II order appears fractured, with leaders from Munich to Washington acknowledging a new era of great power politics. Germany and France highlight the collapse of old security frameworks, urging Europe to prepare for strategic self-defense. Analysts suggest these developments are a consequence of NATO's shifting responsibilities, amplified by American calls for European self-reliance. Intelligence failures and political echo chambers intensify global confusion. What was once a predictable alliance structure now faces internal disputes, leading to inconsistent policies toward Russia, Ukraine, and broader European security, signaling an uncertain and turbulent global landscape.
Well, it goes back to President Trump really insisting that Europe defend itself. You could argue that the logical conclusion of what President Trump was saying was, as far as NATO is concerned, the Europeans have got to, really stump up an awful lot more in terms of budgets and all the rest of it, and don't rely on us to protect you. In other words, don't rely on America to protect you. So they've effectively, he was saying that the Europeans need to protect themselves. So you've got a lot of political jockeying, if you like, in this new environment. That is the new environment which I think Merz and Macron were talking about. These guys haven't got a clue. They really haven't. I mean, their approach to Russia is completely different from Trump's. Trump is trying to find a way out, if you like, of a conflict which was originally led by America, a proxy war, effectively, against Russia, using Ukraine as the base. They'd hoped to destabilize Russia. All their intelligence reports reckoned that the economy was, weak and all the rest of it. and they got it entirely wrong. I mean, they really have. But then American intelligence on economics, I mean, I wouldn't give it house room. It's just appalling. I mean, they always get it wrong. I mean, before the fall of the Berlin Wall, believe it or not, the assumption in America, and this is intelligence assumption, was that the USSR economy was actually pretty strong. And, I mean, it wasn't. It was falling apart. Any half-decent economist could see it. But unfortunately, we don't have any even half-decent economists when it comes to Russia. It's, I mean, really sort of pushed on by the Baltic states and Poland in particular, and of course, Ukraine. Everybody within the European Union, and including the UK as part of NATO, was a serious player in NATO, they're suddenly finding that, they suddenly think, my God, Russia is not only going to take over Ukraine, but they're going to take us over as well. So they've got to prepare for war. I mean, they're ridiculous. They're absolutely ridiculous. They've got no idea what they're talking about. And it's, I mean, if in the earlier days, you would hear Macron actually saying some common sense about Russia. That this was not the situation, that Russia actually was trying to secure its own borders, for goodness sake. They've gone completely the other way. And you've got, this sort of groupthink going on amongst the leaders who are completely misled by, I think, their own intelligence services, and their own intelligence services in turn being misled by the politicians. I mean, it's an echo chamber. They've got no idea. It's actually quite frightening just how appalling these leaders are. I mean, they're leading us into an abyss. And I don't think that we'll have war against Russia. I mean, these people are so incompetent that they won't even be able to assemble a decent combined European force to prevent the supposed invasion from Russia. So in the sense, I'm not worried about that. It's just comic watching these clowns. They're clowns on the world stage, running around, persuading each other that they're the most wonderful saviors of Europe, and they're on a mission and they're going to spend more on defense. I mean, you got Starmer saying, we're going to up our defense spending, and you got the Chancellor, if you like, the lady with the purse strings, Rachel from accounts back in the UK, saying we haven't got the money. I mean, look, this is a clown show. It really is. So I think if you want to take Europe seriously, I would persuade you to go out and have a few drinks and just have some fun with your friends and forget about Europe. They are unconsequential. I mean, they're just, I mean, it's unbelievable. They are useless, absolutely useless. Gone are the days when we actually had proper leaders who understood what they were doing. This lot have got no idea at all. And in the UK, I mean, the big joke is Keir Starmer, who every time he does something, he gets it wrong and he has to reverse. It's called U-turns over here. It goes 180 degrees round because he's forced to do so. I mean, he appoints this wonderful ambassador to America, Peter Mandelson, only to find that the advice that he was given not to do so because of his contacts with Jeffrey Epstein turned out to be true.
Wow. Wow. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I'm speechless over the whole thing. I mean, it really is impossible.
Europe's defense posture is increasingly reactive, shaped by misjudged intelligence and political misalignment. The U.S. underlines that European nations must fund their own defense, exposing vulnerabilities in NATO. Leaders struggle to accurately assess Russia's intentions, inflating perceived threats while undermining their own strategic credibility. Policy inconsistencies, dubbed U-turns, illustrate a continent scrambling to maintain security while lacking cohesive planning. Observers note that despite grandiose defense spending announcements, European powers remain ill-equipped to respond effectively to conflicts, revealing systemic weaknesses in governance and military readiness. The strategic theater is chaotic, driven more by perception than operational capability.
I mean, basically, China's approach has been, we just do our thing. We're not going to tell other people how to run their affairs. I mean, that's their affair. We don't get involved. Now, this is completely different from the American approach.
Mm-hmm.
You will use our dollar. And if you don't like us, we will force regime change and we will get someone in who does like us. This is the American approach. China is completely different. Chinese guy turns up and says, we quite like where you are. Can we do a joint venture to build a port so that you've got better facilities for shipping ore out of your country? Of course, to us, because we will always ensure there's a good market for your ore and all the rest of it. And we will put in a railway so that you can, if you like, send it down in all trucks and all the rest of it. You can have a share in this. We'll do this in partnership. Now, this is completely different from the UK and US approach, which is basically to give these countries, particularly, typically in Africa, overseas aid. And what does that mean? Overseas aid is bribing the politicians. That's actually what what it is. And even though we try and stop all this bribery and all the rest of it, the politicians are a lot wilier than that. They know how to take that aid and put it in their back pocket. And that's been our approach. And actually, politically, Africa is desperately trying to move away from that. There's a lot of corruption in Africa, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Huge corruption. But you can see the political drift, trying to get away from that. And incidentally, this is rather echoing the situation where China is actually ahead of the game because before President Xi, there was an awful lot of corruption. You would get contracts on the basis of who you knew, who you were friendly with, etc., etc. And what he did was, initially extremely unpopular. Basically, he did away with all that. And China now, it's just quite remarkable how their consumer technology is now streets ahead of everybody else's.
Mm-hmm.
They've been just so successful. So when it comes to the relationship with America, America has been making all the mistakes. But there is now a change, I think, going on, Darryl, and that is that the situation in America is now so fragile in terms of the outlook for the dollar. There is absolutely no doubt that if you properly look at the US economy, it is in recession. Of that, there is absolutely no doubt. When I say recession, the only thing that is holding up GDP, which is a nonsense, it's only a measure of the amount of credit, if you like, for qualifying activities within GDP, is just credit. It doesn't tell you how that credit's being used. It can be gambled away somewhere, but it still counts as, as growth. The fact of the matter is that if you take the value of the budget deficit out of GDP, this year, last year, and the year before, America has been in recession. The private sector has been in recession. And that's the one that counts. And this is why unemployment is actually rising. But, the government controls all the statistics. And we believe what they say. They're telling lies, actually. The statistics are no guide at all. So on that basis, it is clear, I think, that the dollar is now under pressure.
The US and China pursue contrasting global strategies. America leverages economic dominance and sanctions to enforce political alignment, while China emphasizes pragmatic partnerships and infrastructure projects. Beijing's approach fosters trade, shared investments, and resource access, avoiding coercion. Africa and other developing regions increasingly gravitate toward China's model, seeking independence from Western aid and corruption-laden structures. Meanwhile, U.S. policy shifts often appear reactive or inconsistent, This divergence illustrates a global realignment. China's methodical long-term engagement versus America's politically charged credit-based influence. Observers argue that understanding these approaches is crucial for investors, policymakers, and nations navigating the evolving balance of power.
So we had a situation where, well, if you went back to the week after Liberation Day, April the 2nd, President Xi then actually went on the offensive, or defensive if you like, but acted as opposed to just sort of calmly laid back. He went round the other ASEAN nations in Southeast Asia, basically talked to the leaders. I mean, he went to the main ones. He didn't go to all of them. But he talked to the leaders. Now, we don't know what the conversation was, but it was quite clear that it was all about maintaining free trade throughout the, if you like, those nations which are either dominated or have a very large element of the Chinese diaspora. And he also, and this is now actually sort of changed hugely because of the Japanese election, he also, along with Japan and South Korea, accelerated the talks towards a free trade area between those three nations. So these were positive moves for the first time by President Xi. And guess what? About a month or two later, the Shanghai Gold Exchange announced that it was opening vaults in Saudi Arabia and Hong Kong. We have seen further evidence that Hong Kong is being beefed up to be the international financial center for China, as its CIPS settlement system, the Chinese international payment system, really gets into a higher gear. And the whole concept, if you like, is that these vaults will allow, for trade settlement purposes, yuan, Chinese yuan, to be exchanged for gold. Now, what we haven't got is we haven't got a fixed gold yuan rate. But I have no doubt that what he has done is he has put in place the ability to fix the yuan to gold for international trade settlement. So, and now we have, I mean, things have been deteriorating in terms of America's finances. And obviously I don't know what the Chinese internal advice is to if you like, President Xi and his fellow senior ministers. But I would guess that they're making the assessment that the American economy is stalling, and that therefore the US is very definitely going into a debt trap, and therefore the yield on US treasuries is going to rise materially, and therefore they should advise private sector holders, under license of course, of US Treasury debt to reduce their positions. And guess what? That's what they did last week.
Beneath official statistics, the U.S. economy faces contraction. GDP growth, inflated by credit, masks declining private sector activity and rising unemployment. Fiscal deficits and debt accumulation exacerbate systemic vulnerabilities. In this fragile environment, the dollar faces mounting pressure. China's strategic assessment sees the U.S. approaching a debt trap, prompting reductions in treasury holdings. Rising bond yields and market volatility highlight an unsustainable credit-driven growth model. Analysts warn that standard economic indicators no longer reflect true conditions. Investors and policymakers must confront structural weaknesses that challenge confidence in the dollar, exposing the risks of reliance on fiat currency.
So you can see that the indications coming out of China is that the Chinese now think that the dollar is on the verge of a collapse. Now, how long the collapse takes, we will see. But you can see which way this is going. And we should pay attention, if you like, to these moves because they are extremely important, particularly when you have a stock market with the S&P close to all-time records. You have bond yields tending to drift a little bit lower in this environment, etc. All these things are not looking quite so sure if you look at it from China's point of view. And the other thing I would point out is if you look at commodity prices have been rising ever since COVID. And if you look at the CRB index, it's 3 times what it was at the time, which means it's risen 200%. A lot of people have noticed this, but this is actually very, very important. So, from China's point of view, America, they don't need to do anything. America is just destroying itself. But what China is now doing is it's moving into self-protection mode. It's ensuring that it doesn't fall, its currency doesn't collapse along with the dollar. And it's put the mechanisms in place to secure the value of its currency against gold.
Global actors are increasingly abandoning the dollar, turning to gold and alternative currencies for stability. China's expansion of gold-backed yuan settlements in Hong Kong and Saudi Arabia signals a shift toward tangible reserves. Central banks, BRICS nations, and African countries accumulate gold to reduce exposure to weakening fiat currencies. The U.S. Federal Reserve has limited options to protect the dollar, with interest rate interventions politically unviable. Experts argue that gold's role as true money is resurging, highlighting a growing divergence between Western financial instability and Eastern strategic foresight. The dollar's dominance faces unprecedented challenges in the coming decade.
Yeah, well, this is something over which they've got very little control, per se. There is something they can do, but they won't do, and that's raise interest rates. If they raise interest rates, they'll protect the dollar. They will protect the dollar's relationship with gold, which is the important point. But they're not going to do that. Basically, we're looking at the end game for the dollar. The dollar is a fiat currency. It's not going to last very long now. So far, it's lasted, from 1971, end of Bretton Woods, to today. So we're looking at nearly 55 years. That's probably about reasonably good for a fiat currency, actually, that sort of length of time. But, it's over. It's over. The key to it is to understand that gold is money and everything else is credit. Okay, and that includes currencies. The thing that's amazing is that the economics profession doesn't actually understand this. They don't even understand how bank credit is created. They think it's sort of, some sort of, reserve multiplier, whatever, but, which isn't, it's not that at all. That's a separate topic. The point is they don't understand what the hell is going on. Everybody in Asia does understand, and they know what's happening to the fiat currency. They're getting out of it, and the way you get out of it is to sell it for real money, which of course is gold. And you don't just look at the reserves on the PBOC's balance sheet, because not all this gold goes there. In fact, I think a very small portion of it goes onto the PBOC's balance sheet. The rest of it, we know, is spread around various parts of the Chinese government, whether it's the People's Liberation Army or the youth wing of the Communist Party or whatever. It's all hidden in there. Call it some sort of huge, great wealth fund, if you like. And not only that, but increasingly individuals in Asia understand what's happening. And so they're getting out of, their own currency, in a sense, into gold and also silver. And this is creating, if you like, a bit of a crisis for Western capital markets. On top of that, when you got the BRICS Forum and you got the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and all the rest of it, there are obviously discussions, if you like, particularly in the sort of sidelines between the heads of central banks and so on, about the future role of gold for BRICS and also for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Now, that explains why quite a lot of countries, places like Africa, for example, are accumulating gold. They're trying to get away from holding fiat currencies, and particularly dollars. And this is why it's quite clear that the end game, as far as the dollar is concerned, will see it collapse, and the Chinese meanwhile will put their yuan, their fiat yuan, onto a gold standard, so it becomes a gold substitute. I mean, the only question we don't know the answer to is how long will this process take? The fact that China is now turning around and has very publicly told its investing institutions, who under license, because they have to be licensed by the PBOC to buy foreign bonds. Under license, they have been told, reduce your positions.